because Paul Wiedefeld is here, Martin DeCaro joins us in studio. He is WAMU's transportation reporter, making me basically irrelevant to this conversation. Martin DeCaro, thank you for joining us.
No, I actually just wanted to sit with Tom in a studio for an hour or so.
Well, what's going to happen here, Mr. Wiedefeld, is that after Tom and Martin have finished with you, I get to pick up the pieces at the end of the broadcast. That's what happened. But if you have questions or comments for Metro's new General Manager and Chief Executive Officer, you can call us at 800-433-8850. We usually start by discussing a few related or unrelated issues in the region, the biggest of which, I guess, this week is that the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Channing D. Phillips, has decided to close the investigation that started way back in 2010 of the then campaign of candidate Vincent Gray, who then became the mayor for 4 years. The election continued through that. He was defeated in 2014. The investigation, I should say, continued through that. Then the U.S. Attorney Ron Machen resigned, and then his assistant Vinnie Cohen Jr., who was working on the case with him, didn't get the top position. He also resigned, and Channing D. Phillips says, well, now it's over, causing a great deal of, controversy, some angst, and some hand-wringing, Tom Sherwood, over what has been going on for the past 5 years that has not ended up in any kind of indictment. I should say that yesterday we interviewed Vincent Gray's attorney, Robert Bennett, and he revealed that he had presented the U.S. Attorney with a credible individual who had directly asked Jeffrey Thompson, the illegal campaign funder, if Vincent Gray knew about the money, and that Mr. Thompson at that time adamantly said he did not know. Robert Bennett saying that he suspected that had some bearing on the dropping of the case.
Well, Bob Bennett, of course, is a terrific lawyer. He represented Bill Clinton in the Monica Lewinsky affair. He knows what he says. He measures his words very carefully. I don't know that the information that he says, I don't know who the person is, man or woman, that quoted Jeffrey Thompson saying he graded it and everything. I suspect this is more than that. Is why the case was dropped. I think the prosecutors, based on my reporting, the prosecutors could not get around the fact that Jeffrey Thompson, for a variety of reasons, some known and not known publicly, was not a witness you could put on the stand. That most of the other people who have pled guilty to participating into the shadow scheme, but that it was Jeffrey Thompson who was the glue to all the people involved. And if he were not credible on the stand, then they could not bring charges against Vince Gray. Apologize if my new iPad just beeped and I thought I had quiet. But in any event, so that's where we are with that. The good news for Vince Gray, and I think that is the main thing after all these years, and we'll be dissecting what they did and did not do in the prosecution realm. Vince Gray is now free from this investigation, and he now has to decide whether he's going to resume his political career. Many of his supporters want him to. They want him to run for the Ward 7 council seat against Yvette Alexander, maybe run at large and try to unseat Vincent Orange. And some of them are even talking to Marion Barry. That is, you go back to the council and in 2 years, you run against the incumbent Muriel Bowser. That can become mayor again because he was unfairly denied re-election.
Paul Wiedefeld, Martin DeCaro, you can feel free to venture opinions on this topic if you will. Of course, Mr. Wiedefeld, if you do, you will probably endanger your job, as it is.
Even more so.
Yes. But there's that, and then there's the ongoing speculation that, as Tom pointed out, Mayor Gray has been mulling a run for office again, even before this case was dropped, whether or not he will run in his ward, Ward 7, or whether or not he will run for one of two at-large seats, either the Democratic seat or the non-Democratic seat. Still all up in the air. We'll be hoping to hear from former Mayor Vincent Gray at some point in the near future.
Can I just give you a caution on that? You know, every race Vincent Gray has run, he has taken his time. He got into the mayor's race itself very late into the campaign. He got into the Ward 7 race when he ran. He got into the chairman of the council race very late. He does not rush into these things.
Okay, one other former chief executive, former Governor Bob McDonnell, federal authorities are urging the U.S. Supreme Court not to review the public corruption convictions of the former Virginia governor. This has been going on much. The post-investigation, indictment post-conviction scenario involving the governor trying his best to stay out of jail.
Well, the wheels of justice do grind slowly, unfortunately, and McDonald has the right to go all the way to the Supreme Court and try to get the Supreme Court to overturn his conviction. He says this conviction criminalizes politics, that all he did was be nice to somebody who wanted to have business in Washington, in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And the prosecutors say there were too many quid pro quos. Whether the Supreme Court takes the case or not, great unanswered question at this moment.
Our guest, as we said, is Paul Wiedefeld. He is the newly appointed General Manager and Chief Executive Officer of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority. If you'd like to join this conversation with him, you can send us a tweet at Kojo Show. Send email to kojo@wamu.org or go to our website, kojoshow.org, where you can watch the live video stream of this broadcast and also submit questions or comments. Joining me in studio, Tom Sherwood, our resident analyst, and Martin DeCaro. He is WMU's transportation reporter. Martin, my work is done here.
Well, thank you, Kojo. I'll be happy to host the rest of the show. Just turn Mr. Sherwood's microphone off. Thank you. All right. Mr. Wiedefeld, thanks for coming by. It's good to see you again. We've spoken multiple times already. We've usually talked about operational matters, fares, delays, etc. Let's talk some politics. As Tom reminded me, this is the Politics Hour. When you were head of BWI Airport, what type of political experience did you have working with members of Congress, working with other elected officials on getting what you needed done?
Sure. I worked at BWI, and remember my board there was the Board of Public Works, which is the governor, the controller, and the treasurer of Maryland. All of our contracts would go before them. Obviously, anything from an operation standpoint was immediately elevated to that level. I also have Annapolis, which was another part of my world. My budget committees, my budget chairman, and they were very active. Obviously, the chairman of the budget committee that I answered to, actually, the airport was in his district, so it was used to dealing with those types of dynamics. And then clearly with the congressional level. Again, the same issues. The BWI, in terms of its economic engine part, they were very concerned about.
I ask because part of your job description here as general manager of Metro is to deal with the internal and external politics of the agency. Metro doesn't have a dedicated funding source. You have a couple of options on the table to change that. Are you ready to go up to Capitol Hill and ask this Congress or the next Congress, and the climate's not really good right now, to ask for extra money to subsidize Metro's operating budget? Or do you think it would be more realistic to ask the region to come up with a regional sales tax to give Metro a dedicated fund? Tom is laughing, but there are good arguments to be made, and he's aware of these, of course, that something is necessary here. A dedicated funding stream. I'll give you a couple of examples. Chicago, Cleveland, Dallas, Los Angeles. Those are regional transit agencies that have regional sales taxes funding them. Which one will it be? Both? Neither?
Right. Right now, that's not my primary focus. I'm focusing on obviously safety and system performance. From my perspective, I think the riders, our customers, would look at me like I lost my head if I started, going down that route right now. I've got to get the system back to where it should be. I've got to build our credibility before we deal with longer term issues. But you did cite exactly what does occur in the industry, which is generally there is some sort of sustainable financial structure, not a year-to-year issue. And then sometimes we enter into some agreements that give us some leeway, but by and large, it's a year-to-year situation. But that's not very good.
Doesn't the situation have to change, though? How much longer can Metro go on without a dedicated funding source?
It's something that I've heard. I've been out, as you know, last 3 weeks talking to lots of people. It's something I've heard repeatedly. From a number of sources, or different perspectives. The business community, I think, understands that. I've heard it from elected officials, so it's out there for sure. But again, I think that is a regional discussion. I would be part of it, but right now my focus is on the day-to-day and get that system to where it should be.
And let's not forget that unlike those other cities that Martin mentioned, the Congress has to be involved in terms of funding, since the federal workforce depends so much on the Metro system.
Right. And I think you also mentioned, I think all those are two
right.
parties, not 3 and 4.
The Washingtonian December issue has a very readable overall summary of how Metro got to where we are today. And I thought one of the things in that article, and I should give credit to the authors of it, whose names are Luke Mullins and Michael Gaynor from the Washingtonian. It quoted Former general manager, Metro general manager Richard White, back in 1994, 11 years ago, saying that Metro was in a death spiral, aging infrastructure, casual safety culture. Boy, that's an understatement. No accountability from the staff or the management or the board in terms of getting things done. And Mr. White said it was threatening the very existence of Metro. I think many people, the riders who ride today, will say Mr. White had it right, and they're not very hopeful. What kind of hope can you give people without necessarily policy details? But how aggressive are you going to be in restoring hope and not just giving out rosy scenarios?
Right. I will not be giving rosy scenarios. That's not my style. We will be as transparent as I can possibly be. I'll be very frank. I've been on the job 2 weeks now, and I'm still trying to find the floor. I think, there may be a perception that we're at this level. We may actually be below that level. And as soon as I get my, a little bit better understanding of that, I will be very clear of where we are. So we know where the baseline is. Looking at some of the things that we've presented, or even how we even analyze some things, almost, it's just not reflecting reality. And so, we got to get that mindset changed. And so that is what I will do. I've been very clear with the staff that, this is a new day. We have not given the focus, I don't think, to the frontline people in terms of, understanding that they are what runs the system. And so some of the things I've heard from our customers is some of the, the way they're treated by our frontline people. But if we're not respecting those people, then there's no way they're going to respect our customers. So I think it's getting at all those things that Dick mentioned. And as Martin said, some of these things are, structural, that have to be dealt with for sure. But, there's also just a culture of safety that is, again, not where it should be. The culture of customer service is not where it should be. The culture of management and the transparency within the communication between different units is again not where it should be.
I have a problem in that someone told me that you have like 20 people or something who report directly to the general manager on a day-to-day basis. It just sounds like the bureaucracy is suffocating, and that whatever the union wants to do, and there are issues with the union contract of that, whatever people want to do in mid-level management, it just seems to me that the structure of the entire bureaucracy is such that I don't say you get anything done, but have meetings, reports, and
right,
all that stuff.
It's interesting, Tom, you say that, because I've looked at that organizational structure and I can't figure it out. I really can't. And so I will be getting that much more streamlined to the way that I'm used to managing, which is basically I want a COO, I want a CFO, I want a chief administrative officer, and that's generally how I do it. And that will be the team that runs the place. Yes, other people will have access to me, but I cannot possibly manage those people day to day. It's not, it's just not
the
possible.
board's going to give you the running room.
Yes,
Our guest is Paul Wiedefeld, newly appointed General Manager and Chief Executive Officer of Metro. You can call us if you have questions or comments for him at 800-433-8850. You can send email to kojo@wamu.org. You mentioned that your chief priority right now is safety, but from what we hear from our listeners and others, winning back Metro riding on a daily basis has to do with the frustrations of single tracking, rush hour delays, out-of-service cars, broken escalators. How can you immediately address those kinds of problems?
Just so I'm clear, Kojo, it's actually, I have three things I'm focused on right away: safety, system performance, and our fiscal house. That's the other thing that I've got to do.
System performance.
Right, but system performance is the big one for sure. The thing that I've got to understand is how we've been doing things, and is there another way to do it? I'm challenging the different procedures that we followed, whatever it is. So literally, I'm meeting twice a week with. I want to know where we are on rail, particularly the 7000 series, and getting those cars here. Where we are on repairing the cars that we have out of service due to parts issues. We have almost 80 cars out of service right now. All those impact, the day-to-day operations. Getting the vertical circulation, again, twice a week. I want to know what is going on, how are we doing it, and then, in general, what is going on with the overall system, where we failed, and what are we doing about it. So I am on that, hopefully that
sounds
is
overwhelming. But I spoke to someone just before we came on today, and he said, could you just tell him to fix the damn audio system so that we can understand what the hell they're saying on the trains? I'm sorry to use those two kind of curse words, but that's the frustration. I have to say, I'm one of the people who have stopped riding Metro. I used to ride it fairly frequently on weekends. I just said, I don't want to spend my weekend underground. And so I don't, because it takes too long. But the sound system is just horrendous. I'm thinking if you go to Best Buy at Tinley Circle and can buy some equipment that you could put in and people can understand it. I don't understand why that can't be fixed in a matter of probably say months, because it's such a big system. But why do you have an unintelligible sound system, and why can't that be fixed?
Right. I've heard different things. One is I've heard some of our operators in the way that they talk is an issue sometimes. So that's one. One is obviously some of the older cars, they do not have the equipment. And apparently we mix cars at times, different generations of cars, and that creates issues. All that is out there. That's not, to me, that's what that's the cars we've been dealt with. Now let's figure out another way to get there.
Let's talk
and
about
that's want to make sure that's what I'm doing.
Okay, that is something you can fix fairly quickly if somebody focuses on it. And I don't know what quickly means.
I don't know either.
Let's talk about the new rail cars, Mr. Wiedefeld, because you just alluded to them. You've said repeatedly that you don't want to ask people to be patient. They've been patient long enough. Right. But insofar that Metro's daily problems are, 2/3 rail car issues. That's your own figures from your own transit authority. It's going to take 2 to 3 years to replace the oldest, most unreliable rail cars. If the new ones, the 7000 series, come on board on schedule, they're already way behind schedule. Right. You just recently met with officials from Kawasaki Railcar here in Washington. They came from Nebraska to sit down with you. What was the outcome of that meeting?
Sure. Actually, they came from Japan and Nebraska to meet with me. And what they have said, and apparently what they said in the past, is we've got this under control and we'll have it under control. And here's the schedule of these things coming. I don't buy that. I don't, I want to get out there and see for myself. And I made clear to them that this was the #1 priority. They have, we do have the first 64 cars on actual property.
They were supposed to be here July of 2020.
Right. I know. No, that's,
you were not responsible for the earthquake in Japan.
Again, that's irrelevant. It's on my plate now.
Yeah.
So, what we want is 12 cars, basically coming in on a regular basis
per month.
They have not been able to get them off their line in the condition that we want. And we're not going to put ourselves in a position of making mistakes that other properties have made, where you accept something and then you live with it for the next 50 plus years. So we are going to make sure they deliver what we paid for. So once we've got to the point where they have literally 16 cars now in Lincoln, Nebraska that need modifications, and they have not come off the line. That line is shut down right now.
Wow.
So they are losing money by the minute. Literally, we're not paying them for what they've done, because they haven't gotten there, and their line is stopped. They literally have laid off people. So they, it is, from their business perspective, they've got to go in. But we are not going to move until we know that what comes off that line, when we get these cars in Greenbelt, all we want to make sure is they weren't damaged in transport. We don't want to be dealing with issues that should have been dealt with as they came off the line. So what I said to them, they've told me a certain short term in the future, they're to give me an exact date of when these things will be back coming off the line in the condition we want. And I said, that's great. I will be there when they come off the line, and we'll make sure of that. So I'm adding that pressure. I did also meet this week with the congressional delegation from both Maryland, Virginia, and DC, and I've asked them for their support, because I think it's got to come from all different levels to say, look, this is the #1 priority. I told them, this is my #1 focus, from your world, is to get those cars done.
Specifically, well, first, let me just have you clarify something. Their assembly line is shut down now. Is this related to the rail car issue, or is this something other issue?
We're not accepting any cars. There's no sense in producing something that we're not going to accept.
It's the doors, the seats, and software issues. What exactly is holding up?
My understanding is literally some of the seats, they when we got them here, literally how they're put together was falling apart. Again, so that, if we start taking in all these cars, then we've got to create a campaign to do that. So we're taking the cars out of the system. And again, we've paid,
billions.
Yeah, or we have a contract worth billions. The other thing that I drew to their attention, or two other things, is, New York's behind us. This line is to produce lots of cars. Well, we're getting a big chunk of them, but then there's other properties where we're holding that up. And the other thing that I did say to the president of Kawasaki for their car manufacturing plant is that at the end of January, the CEOs of the major properties get together, in effect, in a sort of a very close meeting. And I told him, I said, because his feeling was that we'd have these back online in January. I said, well, that'd be great, because at that meeting I'll be able to talk about what a great success story we have at Metro here with the cars moving off the line now.
Wow.
So
you're
continue to put
originally
pressure on
from the
that.
Baltimore area, but now you've moved to the district, and it's my understanding you take the red line every day. How's that been for you, and what kind of issues have you been able to identify from a rider's perspective?
I've started to see a lot of what I've heard. I've seen trains come in with one car that doesn't open, the doors don't open, and there's some issue, and it's either dark or it's not even dark, it's lit. And I understand the frustration. People are standing there waiting to get on the car, and then all of a sudden they got to run up to another one. The crowding, particularly in the early morning, I'm catching the red line, particularly when some of the MARC trains are coming in and some of the commuter trains, and all of a sudden, in an instant, the platforms are packed. I've dealt with some issues with unruly passengers. I've seen that. I've seen customers irate at machines. A lot of the exact same frustrations that we all feel. What I am doing, though, as part of that, is making sure that I get to know every station manager, every police officer, to get them to understand that they need to step up. I can't do this. There's no way that I or anyone else is going to turn this thing around without those people there, basically reinstating the pride that they had in this organization and recapturing that.
Just make sure that when you're riding the trains, you don't carry a sign saying Metro General Manager.
Can I make a quick correction for you?
Yes, please.
I said that Richard White made this comment about the death spiral 11 years ago in 1994. That was, someone tweeted to me, that was 21 years ago. So the death spiral has been going on much longer than I suggested.
Did you read the Washingtonian piece?
I did, not thoroughly yet, though.
There's an issue I want to ask you about in there, and it relates to the Rail Operations Control Center, an issue I'd like to get into today, if we can. We've known about the incompetency inside the ROC, as it's called, since the NTSB investigation into the January 12th LaFont incident. The FTA did its own report that came out in June detailing issues there. This Washingtonian piece says when ROC staff and train operators get into snits, and it's an undetermined number of times that this happens, operators occasionally, quote, get so mad they would break the train by dumping the air out of brake lines, temporarily disables the train, and requires staff to go through a lengthy troubleshooting protocol. I mean, that's astonishing, number one. What's going on here?
Yeah, that is, again, I think it's creating a culture that is not acceptable. The culture that I had at BWI, for instance, I mean, those things are just, it's just unbelievable that would occur. If that occurred, I don't know, the details.
Does Hercules Ballard, is he still in charge of the Rail Operations Control Center?
I don't know.
He testified at the NTSB hearing in June, and he sounded like someone who doesn't know what's going on inside the Rail Operations Control Center. His performance was jaw-dropping, I thought, because of so many things he didn't know was going on in the control center that day in January, with the incorrect deployment of the ventilation fans and just the day-to-day operations in there. How concerned are you about what's going inside the ROC?
I'm concerned with what's going on throughout the entire organization, not just the ROC. Again, I am, as I mentioned to Tom, I mean, the structure is, it's just, it's mind-boggling. So I've got to get that to a stage. One of the things that I found, I think Dick White mentioned it, is the silos that we have, everything seems to be delegated up, not delegated down. So whether that's through years of, I don't know what it's from, but that is where we are. And I've got to change that as well. And these are some of the things that I've talked to my senior staff directly about. And it's what I'm saying to the line personnel, is that's what we need. It can't be, it can't be at the top. It's got to be people buying into who we are and what we want to be. And to get there, that's right.
To be clear, though, you do have the management flexibility to to restructure how people report to you and the jobs that they'll take on, so it does get to the line
Right.
worker. Okay.
Yeah, and but just so you know, I've started that process. I'm starting on the rail operation sides first, and I've been clear to the management that I will be going to by section to figure it out. And
We haven't
so
gotten
you'll
to
see
the
that.
buses yet. That's true.
That's
I
right.
see Kojo actually wants to talk.
No, I actually want to bring a member of Congress onto the line, because on line 2 here is someone identified as Congressman Jerry Conley, Democrat of Virginia. Congressman Conley, thank you for calling.
It's good to be with you, Kojo, again. We're about to vote on the floor of the House, but I want to thank you for having the new general manager of Metro on this morning, and also want to congratulate Mr. Wiedefeld on his appointment and invite him to join me in riding the Orange Line. My constituents in the Orange Line have some of the longest commutes in the Metro system, and it would be very, I think, useful for the new general manager to hear from them.
Congressman, we'd love to do it. It'll be anytime that works for you.
We got a date. We'll try to do it over the holiday.
Right. Nice seeing you again, sir. Hearing from you again.
Terrific.
Glad
Thank you, Kojo. and
Glad
thanks
the
again.
fastest route you could get to the Metro general manager was through this radio broadcast, Jerry. But thank you very much for your call.
We met him and the other members of the delegation right now recently. Actually, Mac, that was the day I met you in the hallways of the House office building. Congress is dealing with an issue right now about Metro's funding. There's a cut to the expenditures for your capital budget. My question before was about the operating budget and whether Congress should subsidize that. But Metro receives $150 million annually from Congress for its capital expenditures, which is matched by the jurisdictions for a total of $300 million per year. It's a 10-year authorization. It's $3 billion. The House has cut that down to $100 million per, and there's an effort to get all that money back. Do you have any information about how that's going?
No, but obviously the entire congressional delegation has been very strong supporting that and working on that, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Hoping that goes well.
Here is Talib Karim in Washington. Talib Karim, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kojo, and we invite you, Kojo, to help us have us on next Tuesday for Tech Tuesday, because the conversation that we wanted to invite the new GM to discuss is the workforce of current workforce and the future workforce. You talked about the cars that are stalled in Nebraska. But what about investing in young people here in the District of Columbia and Maryland and Virginia, and to develop the next generation of transportation engineers and engineers that are working in both systems that were discussed here today, and make sure that the issues of competency are no longer, because we're investing in developing science and technology and engineering and math, both in our schools, as well as upgrading those both vendors who are involved in these types of issues, IT and otherwise.
What do you see the general manager's responsibility in that?
Well, one of the things that we did is we invited the general manager to attend a reception amongst the other leaders in the District of Columbia that's going to be taking place again on Tuesday. And I think that the GM can invest, as we talk about competency, again, in staff, both in the operational issues as well as in capital expenditure programs. Why should we rely upon people who are outside of the district when we can develop and invest in our young people, both in the school systems for the next generation of...
When you say the district, you mean the DMV, I'm presuming, since Metro serves all the jurisdictions. Here's the general manager.
I did spend actually this morning meeting a lot of our employees as they came to work this morning. And we do have a number of people that very sharp, new, part of the millennial generation that work for us. What we need to do is bring those people up. Another thing I've done is I've met with all the stakeholders. They've asked me, what were some of my asks. One of them is talent. If they know people that would be interested in coming to WMATA, I am looking for talent. And so again, I'm very open to getting some fresh ideas and fresh views.
Specific
but I have
questions.
people
One
inside.
from Vera in Washington, D.C. Please make it standard operating procedure to have sound checks in the train at the beginning of every shift. Have one employee stand in a car and listen to the announcements. I hear people complain about that a lot, not being able to understand.
That's an excellent idea. I will make sure that we do that. We may do that already, but I will make sure that's done.
Let's go back to another political matter here. In Baltimore, you had access to Senator Barbara Mikulski. She's not running again. If the Democrats were to win back the Senate control, that would help this area a great deal, because she would again be a very powerful member of, I think, the chairman of the Appropriations Committee. But politically, looking down the line, Steny Hoyer, Maryland congressman, very powerful on the Hill, nearing the end of his time. In Virginia, Tim Kaine, some people touting him as potential vice presidential candidate with Hillary Clinton, Mark Warner. The Metro, in addition to trying to win the allegiance of the riders who are so frustrated, it's got to make that approach to Capitol Hill. Will that be something you personally will try to do? Will you have someone, or is there someone who will do that for you? I just think that's the access to the federal workers who use Metro and the buses and the trains need a strong voice on Capitol Hill, and I just don't feel like Metro has it, unless I just don't know who that person is. Maybe Martin knows who it is.
Right. I do obviously have relationships with both senators in Maryland, Senator Cardin for a long time as well, and then I've met with Senator Warner, and yes, we need that. I will be making that personal relationship, so I understand what they need.
This is a campaign. You have to run the place and do the politics of it to run a campaign to get Metro help.
Tom, my vision is, as we get the operations to be where it should be, I will be doing as much external, if not much more external, than I will be doing internal. But I need to get the internals set right. But I want to, my long-term vision is I got a deputy GM that focuses on the day-to-day. I am touching the day-to-day, but I'm focused on the external, because that's where we are, particularly with some of these longer term issues that Mark brought up. But again, the timing is not there now for me to do that.
You would be seen as crazy if you went up there and asked for like dedicated funding or sales tax. First of all, Virginia wouldn't want to do it to begin with, but it would just be remarkable.
It's nonstop.
Well, maybe this raises the issue that some of these problems are intractable, political obstacles included, right? I mean, if a regional sales tax would be something that Virginia, as Tom just mentioned, may never go along with, Metro needs a dedicated funding source, according to many of the transportation policy
Allow me to
experts.
interrupt for 1 second, because we got this tweet from Unsuck DC Metro a long time ago having to do with dedicated funding. Why are all the discussions about Metro finances concerned with dedicated funding? How about waste? $5 billion with nothing to show.
I think he's alluding to the
I never
current
know what he was alluding to.
capital improvement plan that's about 3/4 of the way through. It's about 6 years, $5 billion, and he's saying there's nothing to show for it. That's not accurate. There are some improvements in the system, but not enough. And to the average commuter, if your train offloads 2 or 3 times during the week, what does it matter that escalators are now at 98% proficiency, right? We're still having problems with the rail cars.
Yeah, I mean, I agree in terms of course, we have to show that we're managing it tightly, and the way you do that is you get your fiscal house in order, and you perform. So that's how you get to that to his issue before you go asking for new money. So that I think we're on the same page there. In your where you were going, Martin, earlier, I didn't take this job to throw up my arms and say, oh my God, that's not what I did here.
Why did you take the job?
This thankless job.
Tommy is just like my wife. The region is, I love the region. My wife and I love the region. She went to GW. This is, it's in our blood from that perspective. This system, when you look across the country, this has been, was, the greatest system, in the U.S. by far, and one of the best in the world. To see that slip to where it is, for me as the profession I'm in, that's something that I want to take on. So that's just it. I mean, a lot of people don't get that, but that's
Can you tell us something about, this would be a good segue if we can, who you are? You're a graduate of Towson University, right?
Yes, sir.
Political science.
Yes, sir.
I think that's pretty helpful. But I mean, what do you do when you're not working? I mean, are you a museum goer? Do you play the violin? Do you ride a bike? Do you garden? Give us who are you what's your personality?
Sure. Just real quick, born and raised in Baltimore, son of a firefighter, grew up by Memorial Stadium. If you used to go up to see the Oriole games,
Yes.
Back in the day. So that's, sort of where I come from a large family, primarily firemen, policemen, nurses, lifers and armed services. That sort of is where I grew up, and that's my kitchen table. That's my kitchen table. In terms of things I like to do, to get away from things, I have 3 children, which obviously is first and foremost, but kayaking, biking, exercising. I've been, for my heart, that's why I do it. I'm too old to be worried about.
You're a real human being outside of the job that you have to do to take the stress of that job.
I try to be, yes.
Okay.
If I may,
He didn't mention Rutgers. He also went to
I
Rutgers.
did go to Rutgers, go to Scarlet Knights.
sorry to bring it back to the non-personal side here, but
That's right.
Unsuck DC Metro, who, by the way, are you on Twitter? Do you have any interest in going on Twitter and responding to riders? Maybe not him, but
Right. No.
We should probably say that Unsuck Metro is a Twitter
yeah,
account.
you have a
Right,
Twitter
right,
account.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So with close to 50,000 followers, he kind of is the go-to account when there are problems in the morning.
Right. I've got 2 sources of information, related to that. One is obviously staff, and they follow that and give me
You don't want
what's
to
going on in the world. And I have a 16-year-old daughter that's keeping me very informed of how I'm being portrayed.
Will we see at Paul Wiedefeld on Twitter?
If my staff does it, be honest with you, it's like, again, like sports radio. I just, the coach can't every day get up and do sports radio. That's not what they can do.
Yeah. So about his,
It helps Donald Trump pretty well.
Well,
about his,
I'm not running for president.
hold your
Okay.
thought for a second.
I'll hold my
Martin,
thought
while
for a
we
second.
talk to James in
But only
Silver
one
Spring,
second.
Maryland. James, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hello, how you doing?
Doing well.
Okay, I have 2 things I'd like to discuss. I'll say it very quickly. I'll stay on if you want me to. I'll hang up and you can talk about it. Last summer, I took my wife, it was in July, my wife and I we rode the Red Line downtown because it was her birthday, and I took her to dinner. The trip downtown was okay, but coming back on the Red Line, we had some teenagers come aboard. They began by insulting one of the passengers. I asked them to stop doing it. I was cursed out. My wife was cursed out. They began cursing people on the train. That little button back there on the train to call for help, it didn't work. But this is something that goes on with a lot of frequency where you have people get on the train and they act in an inappropriate manner. And you seldom see Metro Police. Second, Glenmont, especially rush hour. Rush hour to me is like 4:30 to 5:30. There's seldom any police officers there. People come in, they double park, they triple park, and quite often it's a traffic jam getting in and out. You may see a police vehicle there once or twice a week, usually twice a week. But quite often the officer is not in the car, he's in the station.
So you're concerned about security inside and outside of Metro?
Yes, and this is something that's seldom talked about because a lot of people don't ride train. I gave up on it because I don't want to be assaulted, or I want to be insulted, and I did not
Paul
like what happened
Wiedefeld,
to my
whenever you
wife.
hear a story start with there were a number of teenagers on the train, you know where it's going.
Yes, sir. James, I definitely understand where you're coming from. I have met with the chief. In fact, I met with him before I came on board and let him know my philosophy on policing of transit, which is basically to be seen, to be out there. That does not mean hanging out at the stations. That's part of the job. I understand that. But I want people down on the platform. In fact, we spent 2 hours at the station the other night. And basically that was something I heard from customers. And every time someone raised that issue to me, I asked the chief to come over and stand next to me so he heard it, so he understands it. And, that's where I want them down on the platform so people can see them. If there's an issue as a car pulls up, people can wave, whatever, and they can jump on, do what they got to do. They got a tough job. It's a very big system. They're trying to, bounce around between lots of cars and stations, or physically in the station, then outside, as you mentioned.
I want to stay on the security issue because it's one of my particular issues because I just get ballistic when I hear that they're doing these little bag check things.
Thanks for your call, James.
Okay. Yes, it's a very good call because people don't feel safe. It's one thing if you're frustrated waiting for the train. It's another if you feel unsafe while you wait. But these little bag check things that they do when any terrorist person who might be contemplating some trouble would simply see the bag check and turn around and go into another of the 91 stations. Is there I don't even know how many police officers there are. Every time there's some security thing, they come running out with their dogs and they walk around, they look like they're concerned, and then they disappear. I don't know where they go. Do you even have I don't even know how large the force is. Seems to me you don't have a force that really can secure Metro in any reasonable way. But maybe you do. I just never see them.
Yeah, Tom, it's I dealt with this issue, be frank, also at the airport. I mean,
Right.
similar experience that customers feel at the airport. Do we have, or does any, as we've seen across the country, we can't have a police officer at every
Nor should we.
event.
Nor should we.
That's
We
right.
live in a free society. I agree with
That's
that.
right. So it is something that, but where we need to get to, obviously, is to be more proactive and less reactionary. I think that's one of the points you're getting to. It seems like, okay, well, we react to the latest thing, which is, by the way, that's already old. that approach is already beyond.
Mr. Wiedefeld?
So, are you finished with that answer? Because I think
Okay.
that's the comfort and security of the person using the system. And then, of course, unless we don't even get into the bus drivers who feel assaulted, whether you're going to have shields around the bus drivers or what do people do on the buses. I mean, it's a serious issue.
It is, and it's again, it's we're not unique in that situation. Obviously, in Baltimore, I dealt with that quite a bit. And any major transit issue, any major transit system has it. It's interesting. I mean, I've been away from Baltimore for almost 10 years and running that system. Almost exact same issues I've heard from our personnel and the customers particularly on the safety and security and that issue. So I understand that.
I have to say, before I get to my question, just briefly, in my countless interviews with riders, they seem to be more concerned with delays and platform crowding as a safety issue than crashes or terrorist attacks. But the fellow on Twitter before, maybe I was too quick to dismiss him when he said nothing to show for it. I mean, from the rider's perspective, all these billions have been spent, and rail performance is terrible, the worst since 2010. We don't need to rehash what's been in the news of the past 6 months about performance. But the capital spending, you in your news conference a week or so ago, you said, we roll over $200 million a year in capital spending that you don't get to. Metro's completion rate on capital projects is dismally low compared to other agencies. And you're going to use some of this available money that you're not spending to balance the budget next year. On the topic of the budget, the union, because labor costs are rising, right? And you're going to be folding over some money to the operational side to cover these higher labor expenses. Are you ready to tell Local 689 they can't have a raise next year after they've received an 11% raise over the past 3 years?
Local 689 represents Metro workers.
The amount,
About
the
10
amalgamated
about
train
10,000 of them,
yes.
right?
About 8,000.
8,000. Close enough.
Right. Just so we're clear, the rollover is a one-time rollover. It is to prevent an increase in fares or cuts in service. That's why that's being done.
Driven largely by rising labor costs on the expense side.
It's from my perspective, it's this is not the time to do that when we're not performing. It's not the time to cut service, not the time to raise fares. That's still a board decision, and no decision has been made on that. So that is, but it is to give me a breather to basically figure out what we're going to do going forward.
So
but to come out again with cutting service and raising fares out the door is, again, like going up to Capitol Hill and saying, give me dedicated funding right now. It's just, it's a non-starter for me.
So you're not going to negotiate a contract here on the Kojo Namdi show. However, Jackie Jeter is already gone. She's the president of the ATU local. She's gone on record. Yes, just reelected. She's gone on record with me and others. She's going to ask for a raise, and she's going to ask for push back against any further contributions union members have to make to fund their pensions.
Well, she would be recalled from her job if she took any other position.
Naturally, but the reality is you have your expenses are going up 6% annually. Revenues are flat. Can you tell the union, sorry, no raise? Because then it goes to arbitration, and an arbitrator can say, well, you have to give the union a raise.
Martin, it is a negotiation, and obviously we're not going to do it here. But I mean, I will let you know, when I was at the MTA in Baltimore, the Union Hall was also the headquarters for the re-election campaign of then Governor O'Malley. So it's not like I haven't, dealt with this before. It is a give and take. Obviously, there's things that they will want, and some things they will get, and there's other things that we want, and there's some things we will get, and that's how we'll play this. Jackie and I are getting together next week, and I'm sure the discussion starts there between her and I personally.
On to Mark in Reston, Virginia. Mark, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hi, yes, thank you. I'll try to be quick.
speaking of fares, I'm from Colorado, and I love the metro system here, actually, besides reliability issues. But it is cheaper when my family comes to town if I have only one more person to drive into D.C. and to park in a parking garage rather than take the metro, which I'd rather do. So I don't understand why the DC Metro is so expensive in comparison to Europe and other countries, and I'll take my answer off the air.
I'll combine that. Thank you very much, Mark, with a call from Mary Ann in Fairfax, Virginia. Mary Ann, your turn.
I'm just reiterating what he said. What is Chicago doing? What is New York doing that we're not doing here? Because I can get any place for 4 hours in Chicago and pay $2, $3, and so I see that they have a lot of advertising, billboards, that sort of thing. That's
The rent is too darn high.
They have more tracks too.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, I think that I definitely have heard this repeatedly. I think not only the rate, but also the complexity of it is can be an issue as well. There is an issue of how much contribution we get from different sources, and it's a subsidization issue and what we're willing to accept in this region. So that's that's part of the equation. There's no doubt about it.
In addition to price, there's process. You can no longer purchase paper fare cards. Instead, everyone must now purchase smart trip cards. But it's my understanding that people can still use the paper fare cards until March or transfer the value of the tickets. One reason this decision was made is because paper cards are expensive to print, less environmentally friendly. But I'm thinking, what about tourists, people who come here for just a day or two? Is a plastic card really the best option for the millions of visitors coming to D.C.?
I think it is. I really do. Those paper fare cards, they went through the fare machines. I mean, my God, that's was causing a lot of the problems with that. It's just an antiquated technology. I think people are moving in that way. Obviously, we want to move further in that way in terms of the fare collection system. We're not there yet. We have a very expensive.
Where do you? Excuse me for interrupting. Where do you buy a smart card if you're a tourist from Kansas and you come to town and you want to ride Metro? Where do you get this?
Check this out. An email from John. A small issue, but it's representative of the general poor customer service with Metro. I have several high dollar value Metro paper tickets that stopped working. I tried to transfer them to my smart trip pass, but the machines will not read them. Metro's website says I can take them to Customer Service Center at Boston, but they said they did not have a machine to do it and directed me to Metro Center. Metro Center says they'll only transfer one ticket at a time. It's ridiculous that I have to travel to Metro Center multiple times to transfer non-working paper tickets before they expire. Why isn't there an easy way to do this? And as Tom said, to find the dispensers of the smart trip cards.
Right. If it's possible to get back to that customer, let's make sure that we understand what his problem is and we'll get him his money back as quick as possible.
Yeah, I have to say that I want
to hear the smart card.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I didn't have the
thought
answer.
you were done. I apologize.
No. Kojo interrupted me. No, the smart card. If I'm the tourist from Kansas. I'm a family of 4. We want to ride Metro. How do we get a smart card? Right. We don't know what part of town we're in a hotel downtown, maybe.
Well, you're going to get it from the Farebox machine.
There are a lot of those. There are a lot of those.
There are more now than there used to be.
I don't think.
Like I said, I'm disappointed. You've only been on the job for 12 days, but that you haven't at least solved 25 or 30% of these major problems already. Tom asked an excellent question before about politics and going up to Capitol Hill, etc. There are political issues much closer to you. You sit in front of 16 appointees every other week at Metro Board headquarters. Metro has 8 voting board members, but there are 16 board members there. They hired you, but some would say now you have to corral them into a consensus when they're tearing each other apart through parochial interests.
How do you do that?
Thank you, Kojo, for helping me finish my question there, because I might have kept going. I've been known to talk too much.
Right. I need to create a relationship with that board. There's a
new board chairman.
I was about to say there's going to be a turnover in the chairmanship, and basically, so it does present a new opportunity for me and for the new chair.
In my estimation, there are only 2 people who could possibly be the next chairman, based on who could be nominated and who's interested in the job: Jack Evans or Mr. Corcoran from Fairfax County Chamber. Neither is publicly running and neither has said they want the chairmanship, but the other 6 are pretty much not going to be in the running. Do you have an opinion on who would you like to work with, Mr. Evans or Mr. Corcoran?
We're now under 2 minutes.
That's a 2-minute warning.
Again,
No level
I will
offense.
work with the board,
You'll work with whoever, right?
Yeah.
You have to.
I don't-
How
that's
long
my-
is your
I have the
contract
choice.
for?
4 years.
4 years, and you're going to be fired for cause, I guess is the reason. Right?
Yeah, maybe fired for lots of reasons.
Okay.
Is that enough time to turn around Metro, a la Dick Ravitch in New York City in the early 1980s?
It is enough time, I think, to show that we're moving in the direction that we're going, and I think there'll be a lot of based on that, I think it'll give us enough time to go forward.
Does the board need a new compact?
The board may or may not. Again, there's lots of issues. They may even need a new compact just to deal with the USDOT appointment of the 4 members that they get to appoint. There's whether that needs to be a compact change is, I think that's what my understanding is, that will be required just to do that. But I think it gets to that larger issue that we've talked about earlier, that you talked about earlier.
Okay.
Well, we're just about out of time, but is DC going to get a discount from Kawasaki for such late delivery of rail cars? Jason Corum wants to know.
We will basically use everything in our power contractually to recover any costs that we can.
Well, we had a caller from Dallas who couldn't stay on the line, and we only have 30 seconds left. But that caller from Dallas wanted to say she just got back to Dallas. She really enjoyed riding the DC Metro and that it is much better than transportation in Dallas. I felt that was something you needed to hear.
Thank you, Coach. I appreciate that.
Paul Wiedefeld, he is the newly appointed General Manager and Chief Executive Officer of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority. Martin DeCaro is WMU's transportation reporter, and Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst, a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist with current newspapers. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you all for listening. I'm Kojo Nandi. Coming up Monday on the